Okay guys, so we're just going to talk through some of the key points that you want to be aware of here if you're using this type of chest press variation. Okay, so this variation in particular, it's plate loaded, isolateral, meaning that you can use each side, but it's also got the feature of being a convergent chest press. Okay, so you'll come across 2 or 3 different types of kind of basic chest presses, like if we ignore kind of flat, incline, decline, etc. So it can be convergent, which basically means that the arms are coming together. So they're coming together like that. So to use our kind of anatomical terms, you're going to have the arms horizontally adducting right across. Okay, so the chest is going to be getting into a shorter position in that type of chest press exercise. If you've got a divergent chest press, your hands are starting here, but they're actually moving out. Okay, so relatively inefficient for training the chest, or not as great as a convergent variation at least. And then you've got something in between where it's just kind of a flat range. So you're basically not really changing the actual hand position, although the shoulder position is obviously changing. We're talking mainly about the machine here. So as Paddy sets up here, what I want him to basically do is to make sure that that starting position is actually appropriate. Okay, so if he's really having to force himself into that position and I have to, like, you know, shove his hands in as I'm coaching him, I mightn't be too happy that that's an okay starting position. And this is particularly the case if we're working with clients who maybe they have shoulder pain, or they're recovering from shoulder surgery. You know, we all work with clients like this as personal trainers, so we have to be mindful of these things. This is particularly the case if someone says, you know, one of my shoulders is fine, but one of my shoulders, it's really stiff and I just can't get it into that bottom position. So in that case, what I might do for someone like Paddy is I'm going to basically put some sort of stopper in the way of this actual movable part of the machine and the bottom position here. So the most common way to do this is by using something like a plate. So what I can do is, Paddy, if you lift it up just a couple of inches for me, you wouldn't get your client to do that, you do it yourself, and then you rest it back down. Paddy's now a couple of inches shorter than that complete end range of motion of the machine. Because what you have to remember is that although we might be working with the full range of motion of an actual machine, that doesn't necessarily mean it's the full range of motion for our client. It might be too much, and in some cases it might even be too little. Okay, so Paddy, if you try to lift that right hand down off that for me, good man. So what I can see there is that Paddy's still able to pull back a little bit further, so it's likely to be a comfortable position for him, you know. So you can use plates like that, or you can use anything else. You know, some people like to use things like their wrist wraps. You know, if you wrap them up and pop them in under, that can basically just reduce the range of motion a little bit. And sometimes if you're using different chest presses, it means that when you do initially push the weight off, your stopper is gone, and then some people will go a little bit lower. But for the purposes of this, I'm just going to use this as a means of actually standardizing Paddy's range of motion. So let's say that we assess Paddy and we said, right, you know, you had shoulder pain or whatever, we're going to reduce the range of motion just a little bit, and now we've got that standardized. So I'm going to do that on the opposite side. So pop it up a couple of inches for me, pop that under, and now that's Paddy's roughly standardized starting position. So what Paddy's going to do then is press up to the top. And what I want you to make note of here, guys, is look at the way these plates or these handles come together. So what you'll see is as you go down to the bottom, Paddy, and we look at that distance between Paddy's hands, really wide at the bottom, and as you come up, much narrower at the top. So what that tells us is that there's a change in the way we're actually moving the arm across the body. So we're moving much further across than we would on something like a barbell bench press where the hands are actually fixed. And although we get to the top position, the arm isn't being brought fully across the body. It also has implications for the resistance profile, because it means that we're going to have a greater difference in resistance at the bottom versus the top. But this also depends on the types of machines that you're using, because you might be using a machine that increases the resistance as you get to the top, and you'll generally feel that if you're using that type of machine. But in general, as a rule of thumb, guys, if you do have the option to customize the range of motion on an exercise like this, it may come in useful, particularly for those clients, you know, who might experience a bit of pain in the end of that range of motion.